I love threads. Threads is where I shine. Okay, so tonight we are doing MyRECo revealed, my real estate company revealed, and I'm here with Josh Reese, our South Dakota broker, and we're just going to kind of chat about the company with each other. And if we see any questions, we'll definitely answer them. And I see that Pythagora, who's Brian, says, I am that nerd on the internet.
I just want to
So,
point
yeah,
out, I just want to point
go
out
ahead.
what other brokerage CEO do you know would sit down and go on Twitch at wherever you're at this late at night and just shoot the shit?
Well, I don't foresee myself like stopping doing this ever because I think it's part of what makes our brokerage unique, right? Is access and authenticity. We want to practice what we preach, right? We want our agents to feel comfortable in their own skin, being authentic. And so we have to lead from the front and show them that.
I mean, that's one of the things that really drew me in was after meeting with you guys. It was like, this is not the typical real estate brokerage. Like, and that's
No,
a good thing. Like, I love it.
good. I'm really happy. Like we should talk about how we did meet, Josh.
So, So first of all, it was Holly who's not on the call here. She's not with us tonight, but she's the COO of the company. She reaches out to me under a cold um, LinkedIn message. We were not friends. We were not connected. I didn't even follow her, I don't think, on any other platform. And she basically reached out and said, "Hey, I also write for Inman. We're opening a brokerage in South Dakota. Would you be interested in joining as our managing broker? Or if not, is there someone else you know?" And I think actually it was a few days before I even responded. Part of it is I'm not on LinkedIn all that often. But I believe the first response I sent back to her is, "No, I'm plenty happy where I'm at. I'm not looking to move. Thanks." Um, and that was, I think, all that happened for about a day and a half.
Ice
And then
cold.
yeah, but I think that's one thing, in real estate also, all too often, we get hit up with recruiters all the time, and it's just that normal pitch. And I know myself, I mean, I was getting calls, especially after we'd moved to South Dakota, a couple times a week from EXP and Real, from recruiters, and it was just nonstop, pitch, 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 join our brokerage. There was never any value add. There was never anything. It was just, make us look good, help us boost our numbers. This is what we've done. But there was no substance to it. So that was the thing that was interesting with Holly. The first differentiating factor was after I said, no, I'm not interested, we had a really good conversation back and forth and didn't even talk about the brokerage for a while. So um,
Nice.
that was really kind of how it started.
Well, from what I understand, and this is just like because I wasn't involved in that part of it, and Holly didn't tell me that she was even doing these cold reach outs. And that's one thing that I really appreciate about Holly, who's also the co-founder. I'm one of the co-founders, Holly's the other co-founder. And one of the things that I appreciate about her is she has like zero shame when it comes to at least shooting her shot and reaching out to people, and she'll just be like, well, if it didn't work or whatever, or sometimes I'll cringe and I'm like, how do you really put that on the internet? And she's like, well, I got like three people like messaged me about it. And I'm like, wow, okay, well, that's more than I got today because I didn't put something like that out there, right? So she really puts herself out there. And so all I knew from my end is she called me and she said, hey, we've got somebody that's applying for the South Dakota broker position, and I had reached out to him a couple weeks ago, and he basically shot me down immediately and was like, hey, I'm not interested in moving. Which, by the way, is anybody ever interested in moving? Like everybody, I know that your knee-jerk response is like, I don't even want to hear it. I'm happy where I am. And I totally respect that because moving your business is a huge hassle, right? But what does it hurt to at least like find out about it, which is the mindset that Josh is, because before we knew it, he had circled back, as Holly says, he'd circled back to us and was like, "Hey, I did actually check out your brokerage." And basically you were like, "I'm in. I like what I see," you know?
Yeah. I mean, and it was from like go, the conversation with Holly, we had a good back and forth for a while. And when it was over, I didn't think much about it. But the interesting thing is because the connection was made, I figured out through LinkedIn the name of the company, started doing some research on it. Right away, I could tell that something was different. And especially from moving from a different market a few years ago and coming to South Dakota, I saw there was a huge need for a different style of brokerage. And I knew it wasn't, an MLM style, it wasn't a franchise model, it wasn't even a boutique brokerage model, it was a value model. And that was one thing that I really saw in the marketing, not only with the great splits, the splits that I've seen here at this brokerage are better than anything that we offer in South Dakota at any brokerage. And, there was so much value that you guys had provided. And a big part of it is I looked on YouTube and I was like, literally everything they do is recorded and up on YouTube. And it's not like this high polished, they're not, doing this for views, they're doing this for value. And that was really kind of the start of like, okay, I got to look into this more. And then I was really impressed with your guys' backgrounds, just individually with what you'd done before this, um, and your experience. And so that was kind of the point. I was like, all right, I got to eat crow here. And I actually will never forget. We were at my girls' soccer game and I was just on LinkedIn. It was a doubleheader in between games. And I hadn't even told my wife at this point about the conversation with Holly at first. And I was like, hey, I had this weird interaction a couple weeks ago. I think I'm gonna reach out to these people. They've got something going on. And she's like, you want to switch brokerages? And I was like, I don't know what I want to do, but I know I don't want to miss this opportunity. Um, so it was actually I text her on LinkedIn and said, hey, are you free for a call? And she was like, yeah, I'm driving. And I was like, great, I'm driving too. Let's just chat for a couple minutes. So I called her. She was on her way to Omaha. I was on our way from Sturgis back to Rapid City. We yacked for a few minutes and set up a Zoom call with you. And she kind of gave me a little more information about the company, which let's face it, I had already stalked both of you guys. I'd already stalked the company, so it wasn't any new information. But that was another thing for me. It was the amount of information that was just public. You guys weren't gatekeeping anything. You weren't keeping anything secret. Your plans were out there. You were very clear on what the goal was. And that's one thing too that totally different than every other real estate recruiter because real estate recruiters normally will get you on the phone and, well, I'll tell you all that when we meet in person. And there was none of that there. Like by the time I sat down, I knew everything about the brokerage when it came to splits, offerings, value, all that stuff was already known. And that was another reason I'm like, this isn't your typical real estate brokerage because they're actually telling you all this up front. They're not like gatekeeping it and be like, well, you have to have a meeting like they're trying to sell you a timeshare or something.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it like that, but that's so true. But honestly, why should we waste your time? Why should you waste our time? Like, I don't want to sit down with somebody that doesn't know the basics about our brokerage and then I show it to them and they're like, "No, I'm good," or "I don't want to be here." I would rather do a bunch of videos or publish our ICA out there. Anybody can go and read our ICA. We've got nothing to hide, and I want agents to know what we have to offer. And then basically, I'm willing to meet with anybody. Just come to me with questions. Let me know what you need clarity on or anything like that. So yeah, I just don't understand the whole keeping things behind the curtain. I think it does neither of us a service, right?
I mean, I think it
Uh,
just goes back to old school real estate. There was a lot of that salesmanship and stuff. And like, personally, I think that's dead. I don't think the consumer wants that. But it's funny because I think brokerages are just grasping at it for lack of knowing what else to do.
yeah, they're trying to create this like magic or this mysterious whatever. And I we've got tons of mystery. Like my personality is just full of mystery. You never know what you're gonna get. You never know if Sandy Burnett needs to put her foot in her mouth after the next thing that she says. So it's like, well, that's plenty of mystery right there because I don't know what I'm about to say next. But well, speaking of live streams, Holly had commented on here. She said it's so much fun, and how we were built really was with our late night Zooms, which is so true. And then Brian, he goes, changing jobs sucks. A decent job you don't enjoy is better than the stress of changing a job and gambling on a new place. That is so true. That's, how we liken a lot of our advice to relationships. I've noticed that's how men are in relationships. They'll just be like, well, better the devil you do know over here, right? And then
Well,
Holly replied and says, that's why we have the pre-transfer membership option, which is so true. Like somebody can sign up with our brokerage, start the onboarding process, and if they decide that they could start getting all their systems vamped, everything like that, and that way by the time they move their license, they're hitting the ground running. But if they don't like something during the onboarding process, hey, nobody has to know, their brokerage doesn't have to know. They could be like, hey, I'm pulling the plug. And so our pre-transfer membership option's really good for that because again, we've got nothing to lose, right? That way you would have nothing to lose in coming over and just doing things the way that all the brokerages have always done it, because that's the way it's always been done. I think that you for sure have caught that theme does not work at our brokerage. We want the but why behind it. Is that really how it should be done, or should we be thinking outside the box here? Um, because we
yeah.
want our agents to have freedom. We want to offer freedom.
Well, and that's where I think a lot of the time too, like at the traditional brokerage feel is like, don't ask questions why, just stay here. And I think that's one thing too. Once you're at a brokerage, there's this whole like fear mongering of, well, you won't get any better. But what I found is like when you set the bar so low, it's real hard not to be better. And like I was concerned coming to this brokerage because I was settling for, well, there were a lot of issues I had where I was at, but I was just like, well, it's good enough. And I think when you're an entrepreneur and you are a business owner, which let's face it, a lot of brokerages treat you like an employee. And that's one big thing. Like we are trying to teach our agents, like you're a business owner. You need to take, accountability for your business and be profitable, drive your business. We were just talking today about GCI awards
Yep.
and that whole thing. And so ultimately, when you're in a system like that, they train you not to leave, you know? And I think kind of the whole brokerage thing is, give them just enough so that they won't leave. But that's no way that you shouldn't invest in anybody that way. So it is a scary transition to do. But I think if you're sitting there going, there could be more out there. You owe it to yourself as a business owner in real estate to at least explore options. And like for me, it started with looking at a YouTube channel, um, and it just went from there. So don't sell yourself short and just settle for, well, it's how it's always been done. I always make the excuse in real estate, why do we have our picture on our business cards? No one's ever given me an answer other than, well, that's how my managing broker did it when I got hired in the industry. He did it, so I did it. But is that a good enough answer to continually do something?
And you've heard like the analogy or the scientific experiment where everybody's in a doctor's office waiting room and a bell rings and everybody stands up, and the new person that came in was like, okay, that's weird. But because they kept doing it every time the bell rang, then that person eventually starts standing up. And then one by one, people get called back to the doctor's office, and then new people come into the waiting room, and now it's all new, all different people, and they're all still standing up when the bell rings, and nobody knows why.
Yep. And I mean, that's a great analogy for real estate. Like, think about the way we do some things. They really don't make sense anymore. With the technology, how it's changed, just how the consumer has changed. None of it really makes sense. But yet, We just do it because the people before us did. And I think the scary thing is we do it without asking, is this really the best way to do it still?
Hmm. And I think that that's what's really fun about being at a startup is the we have the ability to make these changing decisions and to affect change. And I think another thing that's unique about our brokerage is people get a seat at the table, they get their voice heard. The good idea could really come from anybody. Some of our staff has no real estate experience, and they've brought some of the best ideas because they don't have that real estate experience. And they're like, "Have you considered, doing this program or whatever?" And it's really exciting. Then talking about culture, Josh is one of the best. I mean, you're really one of the best thing that's ever happened to our brokerage this year because you've brought so much culture in. You brought such a positive mental attitude. When something's going wrong on my end, I remember when you were just coming on board and there was like some little thing that went wrong, something the ICA wasn't automated or something. And I was horrified. And behind the scenes, of course, I'm, putting my boot up everybody's ass. But you're just like, hey, no, I'm just excited to get a chance to like, give you this feedback and help make it better and everything. And I was like, wow, okay, that's somebody I want at my brokerage because he's got the right attitude for it. There are a lot of entitled agents that are used to walking around, and we don't we don't kiss your ass here, but we serve you at the
Yeah.
high level, at a very high level, so that you can serve your clients at a very high level. But there's no reason that we all can't like give back and give something to each other, because we're all, you know, we've all worked really hard to get to where we are, and we all have different skills to bring to the table.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of it too is you guys have set yourself apart because of the whole invite only thing, and that is so different because right now we are in like, the arms race of real estate where we have a bunch of brokerages that are like, if you can fog a mirror and have a real estate license, we have a chair for you. The thing that I
Mhm.
noticed when I came here is because we don't want everybody, like you were talking about, if you have an ego and you want us to, kiss your ass, that this isn't the brokerage for you. And because of that, we have a whole group of people that are willing to provide value. And what I've seen, I'm coming up on 2 months now, and the amount of growth I've had personally is absolutely phenomenal because I'm around people who, it's that whole iron sharpens iron thing.
Mhm.
And that's one thing. When you're at a brokerage where only 10% are actually producing agents, that's kind of hard to make yourself better. And that's one thing. Like I wake up every morning and I'm motivated because the people around me are motivated to be better. And I can't say it was always that way at my other brokerage because I was around people that weren't motivated to do anything. And that makes it tough when no one's relying on you to provide value to them and they've just all checked out. And so I think that's one thing like that really has changed, my perception is when you're around people that want to go and like you said are willing to pivot, even being the new guy, there were some things I was a little scared to say some stuff because I'm like, I don't know how this is going to go over. But every time it was, if it was a good idea, let's pivot and let's do it. And, there's been plenty of times where you guys have told me something, I'm like, that's a freaking good idea. I'm going to pivot, and it's just because when you're around people that are willing to do that, your business grows. And more importantly, I think you grow as a person and a business owner.
Well, again, yeah, and let's talk about egos on the business owning side of things, right? This brokerage wouldn't be what it is now if I just walked around shooting down every idea that wasn't mine. And a lot of brokerage owners do that because they want to be the ones that have their name and their stamp all over everything. Well, we named this My Real Estate Company so that it could be your real estate company. Every agent can take that pride of ownership in the brand, and so I love when people want to contribute to it.
Yeah. Well, and that really sets the tone too for everybody else. And I think, that's one thing that you can't train that. You either have that or you don't. And that was one thing that was really obvious, like from go when I sat down with you and Holly for that first interview, which was funny because we almost went 2 hours. Um,
Whoa, we did?
it was close to it. Yeah, I think we
Wow.
ended at an hour and 45.
Oh my God.
Which was funny because we literally talked about, I think, the brokerage for like 15 minutes, you
Yeah.
know, and then talked about other stuff. But even in that conversation, it was really quick. Like, you guys weren't sitting there recruiting me. Like, you told me about the brokerage, and then we sat there and we literally talked about how we could help each other out with, aspects of business and all those type of things. And it doesn't have the feel of the normal recruitment process. And I think, I'll be honest with you, if that was how it was, I would have been out in about 15 minutes. I didn't
Hmm.
need another brokerage like that. I was already at one of those. And
Yeah.
so I think you guys have really set the tone for the rest of the, organization. And the other thing that absolutely blew me away was previously to being in South Dakota, we were at a brokerage and they were pretty successful. But the biggest issue that they had is they like to call it like the matrix model. It was this hodgepodge of, nobody knew their job, nobody had a job description on the staff, and they were still able to grow very quickly. But part of the issue, eventually, it became very clear that they were stagnant. And it was because they got to a point where, organizationally, it was a mess. And one of the first times we ever met together, you took the time to go over the organizational chart. And I was like blown away because not only was it an organizational chart for right now, but it was an organizational chart for like when we have 1 million agents and we're nationwide and, we're like valuation of like $6 billion. Like that org chart was unreal. And so that was when I was like, okay, not only do we have something where they're providing value now, but this is a long-term thing. Like this isn't like a half-baked idea that you and Holly one night were like, we're going to start a brokerage. No, this was well thought out. There's a lot going on behind the scenes that I didn't even know from all the research that I had done before.
Thank you for saying that. I get like a lot of pride in my heart when somebody actually does research our brokerage and then they come to us like Debbie, our first Texas agent. She was like, I had no idea you were building something like this. Because I'll be honest, I've been pretty bad about putting it out there as actually trying to recruit people. I've just been building the systems and putting the value out and things like that. I haven't been very systematic in actually recruiting or actually inviting agents yet. And so when I invited Debbie to, learn about us, I sent her one of our videos. She was just like, I'm in. Just immediately, I am in this for the first time and as long as I can remember made me excited about my real estate career, and she has kept that excitement for as long as she's been with us, which is well over a month now. And it's infectious when they get that excitement and they're just killing it. Their production starts to ramp back up and everything. And I hear about these agents at these other brokerages and their productions suffering, and I'm like, oh, that's really sad to me because our agents at our brokerage are doing well. Like they're producing. They're in it and they're always having a great attitude. And just take Rose, our very first brand new agent. And she was like, I think I'll wait till the new year to get my license. And we're like, I think you should activate now because you could have something under contract or a closing even by the new year. And sure enough, she's got another listing coming and another buyer that she's working with. She's already killing it. So it's just awesome to see that.
Yeah. Well, and it's crazy to see too now in 2 months. I feel like the brokerage every day is leveling up. And, we're bringing on people that are excited to be here. They're infectious, which then makes us want to work harder. And that's one thing that I think you can't replicate. Like you have it as an organization or you don't.
Yeah.
And I think, my background over the last 18 months, I've been consulting with a lot of brokerages and teams. And that was, part of the reason that I knew something was special here when I sat down with you guys was because it's so different. And, I'd challenge anybody if even if you're in a state that we're not in right now and you're feeling like you're not being challenged or something, like go check out our YouTube channel. Watch some videos, watch what we're doing because it just feels different. And some of the videos, it's not high production, we're not there all, it's real, it's raw, but it has a different feel than anywhere else. And I will guarantee you too, if you watch any of our videos, you will walk away with more value than probably your brokerage has provided you in the last year. So, I have no doubt in my mind about that.
I completely agree. And the other thing is, if you watch our videos, you would know exactly what it's like to be at our brokerage getting a training, because that's exactly how we do it. We live stream it. We have in-person participants and people chatting over the stream, which the like chats have kept going on our Twitch. But I have a question for you, Josh. I've been wanting to ask you this.
Okay, I'm scared.
You've seen other you've told me this before, that you've seen other national virtual brokerages and they've tried to recruit you, and to name a few, Real and EXP. What was different enough about My Real Estate Company, who's also a national virtual brokerage? What was different enough about us that you were like, this is it, this is different?
Okay, I'm going to piss some people off with this one, but I have never been a believer in the MLM rev share model. And part of the reason is, in my opinion, I'm just a dumb real estate broker from South Dakota. So take this for what it's worth. But in my opinion, it creates an unsustainable growth trajectory for a brokerage. Because if you're going to continue to give away revenue at whatever percent, at some point, that is going to cap your growth because you're not going to have the capital to continue to expand. And I will tell you, every recruiter that I ever met with one of those brokerages, and I brought that up, never had a good answer. And I think a lot of it is because ultimately they don't have a good answer because there is no answer for it. And if I'm going to grow somewhere, I want to know that it's almost limitless growth potential. And so for me, those nationwide MLM style brokerages with the rev share model, they they never penciled out. And part of it is because eventually, call it what you want, but eventually the people at the bottom, the rev share gets so small. And I had already seen that with people who had gone to EXP early, where the people that were joining, their rev share checks were terrible. I remember quite a few years ago, one of the first people that I know went to EXP, his first rev share check was phenomenal. I mean, I'm like, what is going on here? But then I also remember not very long ago, an agent joined and her rev share, she was excited. Her rev share check took her out to a fancy dinner.
Oh, wow.
And, it's not sustainable. And a big part of that too, and I talked to Sandy Lynn about this, and this was another big thing, is one of the first questions I asked her was, is your guys' plan to ever go public? And she said, absolutely not. And that's one of the biggest issues too that I had with a lot of these, is because, I understand in business, the second a company goes public, it's all about the shareholders. And now in a lot of these brokerages early on, yes, your agents are the shareholders, and I understand that. But eventually what happens, as the valuation goes up, it starts bringing in outside investors, which dilutes the agents' shares. And eventually they overtake the agents because there's always going to be more investors than there are agents as a company grows. So that was another thing for me that I was like, I'm not interested in growing somewhere that's going to go public because A, I don't control any aspect of the shares and the dilution of the shares down the road. The other thing about it that really, was one of those things that always made me very hesitant was there was never like a long-term play. Like, what's the exit strategy of these brokerages? And my big issue with public brokerages and everything, their valuation is really based on their agents. But how can that be sustained when literally the agents can walk out the door? And the example I use all the time is these big nationwide brokerages, EXP and Real, are being run like Silicon Valley in the early 2000s. The only difference is they don't have any they don't have any unique value propositions beside their agents. That's what gives them the value. And if you're a Silicon Valley tech company, your software just can't decide one day it wants to walk out the door. You own
True.
it. But if you're at one of these brokerages and I'm heavily invested in real and have a bunch of stock, and all of a sudden a whole bunch of agents decide, hey, we have a better opportunity, which has happened. Just look when EXP was cruising and real started. Look what happened when all the agents started going to real. EXP
Hmm.
stock went down. So to me, it's not sustainable. You don't really control it. And ultimately, it's really propped up value wise based on things that literally have the freedom to just walk out the door. And to me, those were the three things that I was like, I have no desire to. I have much bigger goals in my life than just being a real estate agent. You know, I want to be successful, but I want to do other things. And part of that is being a smart business owner. And I was like, these things don't make sense. Like long term, they just don't hold a lot of water long term. And I know I'm going to get some people that are going to hate on me for that, but all I would say is look at the evidence. Look at what's happened to the stock prices. Look at what's happened to the percent of, owners, like agents that own stock and investors. Just start pulling those. These companies are all public. That data is all freely available. If you're questioning that, go look at the data. It will speak very clear on what I'm talking about. I'm not just making this up.
When I was with EXP many years ago, and when I was with them, I really I was attracted to how much money the MLM style was making those recruiters at the very beginning, because I was out I went over in 2018, which is very early in the company. And so I recruited and I did pretty decent at recruiting. However, what I knew how to overcome these MLM objections, but I still felt gross doing it. I still felt ashamed. I still felt embarrassed to work at an MLM. And that's why I put out, that quote the other day, which was, like if you have to like try to sell it, if it feels wrong trying to sell it, you're probably selling the wrong thing,
Yeah.
right? And so I know how to overcome those objections way better than probably a lot of people do. They probably sound really dumb when they're trying to recruit MLM style, and I knew every objection overcome, but I just felt icky doing it. And I could tell it was just something I truly didn't believe in deep down, which made it very hard for me to sell. Then I moved to Epic, and Holly and I did a great job recruiting to Epic, and it was almost like a square. Okay, it wasn't quite a triangle like pyramid, what like a pyramid triangle that EXP was. It was almost like a square, because at Epic their model was like your 5 levels are all open, like you don't have to recruit two and have them recruit two for you to open more levels. So we were like, okay, but I don't looking back, I don't see how that's sustainable, but that's neither here nor there. um Now, here was the problem. When I worked very hard to recruit, and Holly and I believe, recruited like 70 agents in the first couple months to this other company. And we, went out there and sold the dream of what the company told us they were doing. We brought all these agents into the company, and we were at the mercy of the company holding up their end of the bargain and actually delivering to these agents what they said they would, and they didn't. And it was an embarrassment. And agents' checks were 2-3 weeks late after closing, 2-3 weeks delayed after closing, sometimes months delayed. It was like nuts. It was nuts. And the support wasn't there and all this other stuff, where I just assumed at a brokerage the support would be there. And so I was horrified, and Holly was horrified, and we immediately stopped recruiting like our second month. And we're like, let's just hold off and see. We really wanted it to work. We really wanted it to work, and they weren't open to our help or our suggestions. And so that's why and how we ended up creating this company. And I'll be honest, Josh, we almost created another MLM because that was what was so ingrained in Holly and I for the past 6 years of brokerages we were at. And we really had to stop and sit down and be like, wait a minute, we actually have the opportunity to create something different, to create something that's for the agents. And why would we just keep, slightly tweaking what's already out there over and over and over, like all these other copycats?
Yeah. Well, and I think the big difference too, and I think this is kind of what you're alluding to, is like with a lot of these MLM brokerages, look where they're focusing their time and their resources. It's training you to go recruit more agents. Like,
Yeah.
did you get a recruitment license no, you got a real estate license.
Yes.
So, that's another big thing to me. It's like I've talked to a lot of these people and the brokerage itself is like, well, our agents do training and they do that. The brokerage though, if you look at where they're investing their money, it's in recruiting and teaching you to recruit. Now, I
Yes.
understand there is some carryover between sales and all that type of stuff, but ultimately at the end of the day, when you look at where they're putting their money, that's what they value. And let's face it, with both of these, any of these MLM models, if they aren't recruiting, they're dying. And it's because the rev share, once again, like I talked about, it's not sustainable. So the second that they become stagnant, it's a bad day for them. And then you have your investors that get really worried, and so they start pulling out. And
Yep.
so, that's the thing. I think just look if you're questioning these things, look where your brokerage is focusing their efforts. What are they investing in you in? You're paying them a split. Shouldn't they be teaching you to do the thing that, you got a license to do? Like, because if you want to be a recruiter, that's fine. There's some great recruiters out there, but you don't need a real estate license to do that. Um, you
Here's
know,
another thing. Who at your brokerage, if you're at one of those brokerages, who are they propping up on a pedestal? Is it a high producer? Or is it somebody that recruited so many agents and he's making this much in rev share and they really, really prop that person up and you're like, oh my gosh, you look up to them and you want to be just like them. I really don't remember them promoting the backbone of the brokerage, which are the producers.
yeah. So, and I think the other big thing about it too is, and you've seen this outside of real estate, and nobody wants to talk about it within the real estate industry, but you've seen all these MLMs outside of real estate where these people have built these huge downlines, and then all of a sudden the company goes out of business. You don't have anything, you know, and that's to me, that's a big problem because when these brokerages are building all these downlines, and now granted, not very many people are super successful with it, but if you are one of those people, it could go away tomorrow. And if they haven't taught you anything, and that's my goal with this brokerage is every time I train a class, my goal is to give somebody, an agent that's at that training, a piece of information that nobody can ever take away from them. It doesn't matter if they go to another brokerage. It doesn't matter if this brokerage, says, hey, you're not good here, you get kicked out. They can take that with them. But if you're at a brokerage where the only thing you get is rev share, what happens tomorrow if they decide, hey, we're going to take the rev share away?
Or we're going to
Like,
fire you
yeah,
or anything like that. Because, yeah, and they can take the rev share away. Like, I had like Rodan and Field skincare stuff, and some of the girls that I knew really built up a huge downline. And then the company switched to affiliate. They're like,
yep.
oh, let's just do affiliate marketing. Everybody gets an affiliate link. Downlines are just gone, gone.
There's a reason that a lot of your MLM style businesses eventually hit a turning point. And it's because the second that you want to go to that next level, investors and MLMs do not mix because investors do not like when you have to pay out that much money. And eventually we're going to see it in real estate. And I'm just looking at history here. I'm big into looking at what's happened before and what's going to happen next. It's
Yeah.
eventually going to happen because investors don't like MLMs. And that's
Hmm.
why a lot of these MLMs, they have a decision to make at some point, and it's if you want to grow, you have to dump and go to a more affiliate model so you can get into retail. And you've seen that time and time again with prime example. If anyone's interested, look at Advocare. Look what happened with them.
Yep.
I know a lot of people that built up huge Advocare downlines. They got to a point where they wanted to grow, but they were stagnant because they were giving out so much revenue. They were strapped for capital because they were giving it all out. And they decided, hey, we need to transition to, an affiliate model and then go try to get into like retail and that type of stuff because that's how we're going to go and that's where we're going to get our investors back. Well, you can't do both. And there's never been a business that's been able to do it. The other thing that I would tell people to look at, if you're looking at these companies, look at the turnover at the top. You know, there's a
Yeah.
reason that these people get up to the top and then just jump ship all of a sudden. You know,
That
I'm
is
not going to
scary.
say
I
any
actually
names.
got nervous when I saw that. You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
I
not
know
going to
what
say any
name.
names here, but you just look at the leadership at some of these brokerages and they know what's going on.
They
They
get what
know
it's good.
and they know when to sell and get out. And the
Hmm.
other thing that I would have a question that I would ask anyone to look into, because once again, these are public companies. What do those executives do with their shares when they leave? They don't keep them. Most of the time, they're out. And there's a
Hmm.
reason for that. If they really believed in the company, they'd hold on to those shares.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted to touch on is one thing. So what do we offer? What do we offer if we don't give you rev share? Because how they like to word it is, but my company's generous enough to give half of its revenue back to the agents. Well, first of all, that's not true, but I'll not get into that. What I will say is here's what we do. You, as a real estate agent, pay a lot of money to your company that you're hanging your license at. Okay. And what we want to do is, first of all, we're not going to be a race to the bottom. And we're also not in a position where we have to constantly chop, chop, chop to, cure our profit margins. We invest in the best tools that we feel are worthy of helping our agents to be very successful. So we invest in the best tools. We protect your reputation by being invite only. We protect the culture here. We don't want to be what is it, that rotating door?
Revolving door.
Yeah, revolving door. We don't want to be a revolving door. We want agents to come here to know what they're going to get, to be, fully in when they're here, and to pick the right agents, not the ones that we just lose to just attrition in real estate, all this other stuff. I'm not saying we're going to avoid that 100%, but we're going to try. And also, you, the agent, if you're watching this and we're not quite in your market yet, and you're the one that took a chance on us and you align your reputation with us, we're going to protect your reputation. We will listen if, somebody else that's a major douchebag with a terrible reputation tries to sign up and join our company. Every single agent will be interviewed at this brokerage, or they will know the managing broker and at least one member of leadership and have that reputation evaluated. Okay. So we just don't want you to be afraid of that, because that happened at both of those brokerages that I was at before. I took a chance. I was the pioneer. I paved the way. I really got all the systems up and running. I dealt with the local association when bringing this new presence of this new brokerage in and everything. And, I had to deal with all that stuff. And then somebody else would come along and join the brokerage, and they'd be like, oh, like society would be like, I'm never doing business with that brokerage if this guy's here, or this gal, or what a joke this brokerage is now. Right. And we all know that happens. We all know that this brokerage is only as good as the agents that are with it. So we don't just want anyone. And it's not a mean girl thing. It is to protect you, to protect your reputation. Um, the other thing that we give to our agents is actual ownership stake, actual equity. And I'm not talking about this is your next lottery ticket in case we go public and all this other stuff, because that's what agents have been conditioned and frankly brainwashed to hope for, oh, this is my next lottery ticket. Like all these EXP agents got rich in the past from this stock. That happened one time. And it's never going to happen again, guys. It's not. So what we offer you is it's more like a country club equity member, right? If you're an equity member, you get special perks beyond just ownership stake in the brokerage. You get special perks like a seat at the table. You get heard. As we grow, not everybody's going to have direct access and a direct line to the CEO, but our equity members will. Just things like that. VIP access at our conventions and our rallies and things like that. We want to make sure that our equity members feel it. All right. And again, this is different from going public because this works because our agents, again, we want to be beholden to our agents and not just a bunch of random members of the public, right? Our agents are the ones that are going to care the most about the value of the brokerage growing. So that is why I believe it'll work.
Yeah. Well, another thing too, and I think, it's that circle, right? We understand that our value is in our agents. We don't plan to go public, so we don't have to worry about that. But part of it too is we also understand that we have to provide that value to those agents so they will stay around. And that's one thing where, our training is phenomenal. I was at a brokerage for 2.5 years, and not a single time did they do any type of training other than a sales meeting in the office once every 2 weeks. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they asked me one time to do a training on CRMs, and I think that's the only training, and I did it. Um, you know, sure, there was a few times that they would take us to like, there's a event in Rapid City every year. There was like a business event and they'd take us that. I'm not knocking them for that. That's great. But we had some great agents at that brokerage. And we had some agents that could have taught some really good topics, but it wasn't important. Their value was not in their agents, it was in their recruiting numbers. And, that's one thing like come to our brokerage, you can come to our meetings. Like they're all
Mm-hmm.
live streamed. You can watch them after the fact. And it's really clear, like we understand where our value is. Like I told you before, check out where your brokerage is spending their time. Look where we spend our time. And that was one thing that drew me in because it was very clear, like you guys are agent focused. And everybody says it. Every brokerage says, oh, we're agent focused, number one, blah, blah, blah. But none of them like put their money where their mouth is. And this is like the first brokerage I've seen in the Midwest where in 2 months, I've got more training than I've got in 2.5 years. And I think it's really good training because we have great agents. So once again, it's that perpetuating cycle. As long as we continue to bring great agents in, we're going to continue to have great training.
Thank you, Josh. I love that. And just a little bit about our training and our support. Let's talk about, I'll touch on what our training consists of weekly, and then I want to touch on our support. So our training is we do a daily coffee chat. We call it daily coffee chat every Monday because that's something that Holly started way back in the day, many, many years ago, and it built up kind of like a following, right? It's your chance as the agent to start your day with structure. So we, no matter what, Monday through Thursday at 10 a.m. Central, we've got something going on. So Mondays are like an open forum. What you got going on in your deals? Like anything we can talk about. How do we work through, something weird happening on a seller's disclosure or something, right? Just anything. We've learned about like different insurance regulations and just all kinds of things, right? Just a complete open forum. Any agent can bring something to the table topic wise. Um, Tuesdays is true crime and real estate. And we've learned that facts tell, stories sell. So why would that be any different with agents retaining information like this, right? So it's all about these frankly horror stories that we hear that happens in the industry, whether it's, agent safety related, somebody getting murdered trying to go do a showing or something, or the agent doing something wrong that's like, don't be that guy, and here's how you can, avoid, here are some red flags, here's how you can, watch out for the consumer and these crazy scams. So different episodes revolving around that. It's more podcast style, and then at the end we have like a nice discussion about from the agent perspective. And then Wednesdays, work at Wednesdays, something about your business, whether it's one of our company systems to get you spun up on, or whether it's an aspect of like social media marketing or lead generation or follow up or anything that is going to help your business run your business like a business. Thursdays are our company wide meeting. We don't have meetings just to have meetings. We want you to get value, get in, get out, get something out of it that we need to pass word on, and we're all good. But I love our company meetings because it does kind of turn into agents opening their mics and saying, I just love it here and I feel so motivated every day. And it really warms my heart to hear stuff like that. But about the support, another big pain point that I personally experienced at these previous brokerages, and a lot of my agents that I recruited at these previous brokerages experienced, was lack of support. You were forced to use tech that you didn't want to use. You were forced to communicate in a certain way that you weren't like comfortable with, and had to go through all these channels, or maybe you had to send an email to an address you can't remember and you have to figure it out or ask somebody again, and then you hear back in 2 to 3 business weeks. Let's just tell you that every single weekday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central, and our hours will expand as our staff expands. But for now, I can guarantee you that from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. every weekday, Central Standard Time, and sometimes outside of those hours, you'll be able to come in to zoom.myrealestateco.com. By the way, even if you're not with our company, I invite you to try it. Come on in, see what our Zoom room is like. And you're going to have real humans greeting you on behalf of the company and like, hey, how's it going? And no pressure or anything. It's just like, hey, what's up? How can we help you? And oh no, you can just say, hey, I'm just checking it out. I heard about this on a podcast, or whatever you want to do. Like, we're cool. Like, come on in and test us. We're cool, you guys.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think pretty much, like I said, I've been around 2 months. Pretty
I
much
can't
every
believe
day.
it's only been 2 months.
I know it's crazy. Well, and to see the progression, we've had in 2 months is absolutely phenomenal to me. I mean, I do think we're moving at breakneck speed. And part of that is because, we're willing to pivot. We're willing to, even if we work on something like this isn't going to work, we scrap it and we start over because I'd rather start over. I don't want to bring an agent into a system that sucks. So when I know it sucks, so there's been quite a few times we've had something that's like this isn't working, you scrap it and you move on. But because of that, I think we're leveling up very, very quickly in the 2 months I've been here. But in the 2 months I've been here, from 10 to 2, there's literally not been a single time that I have not been able to see another managing broker. Holly has been there. I'm normally on. Lindsay, our managing broker in Texas, is normally on.
Mm-hmm.
You can get help if you have a question. And with Slack, we have Slack. So even if we're not on, I know for myself, if you send me a Slack message, I can hop on Zoom anytime for the most part. I'm not going to like talk at the dinner table, but it's a text message of like, hey, and that was one thing, like, especially if you're the type of person that needs the in-person interaction, that's how you learn, that's how you get help. Let's face it, if you need help from your managing broker, are they going to drive into the office at 7 p.m. at night? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, some might, but realistically, that's not realistic. And that's one thing with the systems that we've built, we've made it easy to get that support. And in my opinion, we're continually improving that as we grow because the system's there to support it.
We have white glove concierge onboarding services. So if you make the decision to come over, we've got somebody that is going to make sure that you are set up, that you can log into all your systems, that you know how to use all the systems at our company. We have in-house transaction coordinator services, in-house TC services, And Kyle, Josh happens to love her, but she has been an amazing godsend to the company. She has a lot of experience um, coordinating for a high level brokerage with a lot of agents. And the reason this company wanted to do in-house transaction coordination services is because we want them to be able to be plugged into all the systems that you're already using. So speaking of Slack, you get your direct support channel. This is private to you, your managing broker, your transaction coordinator, compliance, like your concierge, like all those people are in your private support channel just for you. Like if you have a question, you ask, somebody's gonna, if it applies to them, they're gonna make sure to get back to you and everything. So we wanted our TC involved in, infiltrating all those systems. And then we also wanted transaction coordinators that were held accountable by the company. We noticed in other companies when they offered TC services, if they're contracted out, they don't really have that skin in the game to like not fuck up your transactions. And we really want to make sure that we do this right for you.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know how many times, since I've been here, somebody will put something in a support channel. And that's the cool thing about it is because there's a few people in there and you have a team supporting you as an agent. I mean, we've all been agents before. We understand, like you're out, especially when the market gets hot, you're going showing to showing, writing offers and doing all that. You might not have a chance to rework a logo, you know. And I've seen it multiple times where someone will be like, "Hey, can somebody do this?" And because there's so many people giving you support, they're not all going to be free, but somebody is probably free to get that for you pretty stinking quick. And that's one thing as we continue to grow, there's going to be even more support. Because once again, if we don't provide the value, the agents aren't going to stay. And if our whole goal is to keep agents around because retention is a lot cheaper,
Mm-hmm.
um, those support things that we have are going to continue to stay in place and continue to get better.
And we'll wrap this up, but I do want to say that another thing that's very important to Holly and I as founders of the company, and Josh totally gets it as well. When he mentioned retention, we truly mean that. So ask yourself, if you're at a company and they keep writing checks for agents to join, or they keep giving these agents all these sweet deals, deferment for even a few years I've seen, and just different things like that. What have they given you for staying with the company? Because we have perks and rewards for agents that stay with our company. We don't just want to chase after the next shiny object agent, right? We're not just trying to chase after the next one. We want to thank and reward the agents that stay with the company. That's very important to us. We want to reward loyalty.
Yeah. We want our agents to feel valuable, um, because that's how we're going to keep them around. And we're going to continue to invest our time, and our effort and our company resources into you as an agent. We're not going to be cutting checks to bring in a big influencer.
Mhm.
I think we've all seen how that works in the sports world. Like, you know,
Yeah,
it's not
exactly.
great for retention because let's face it, there's always going to be somebody else that'll cut them a bigger check.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody else can throw money at those problems. We're going to blow your mind. Just
Yeah.
something you've never seen before is all I can say.
And
So,
we understand you have a choice, and that's another thing about it is we understand you can walk out the door. So it's in our best interest to give you reasons not to walk out the door. So,
we're the only brokerage, the only national virtual brokerage that's veteran owned, that is not created by rich tourists or dropouts or failed at everything else. So I might as well own a real estate brokerage, or I'm a billionaire coming in because I know owning a real estate brokerage is going to make me rich or richer or whatever. Holly has tons of experience on the managing broker and staff level side of things. My experience, I've been a producing agent for 10 years, and I also have the experience with a business degree and the background of organizational structure and management and continuity of operations as we scale nationally. So just it's just been, I was saying, like we're like the Avengers, all of us aligning our skills. It's been really cool growing this brokerage. It's been a privilege.
Yeah. Well, and it's been awesome. I mean, it feels like way longer than 2 months, but I personally am way more engaged, way more motivated now than I've been in years, just because of being around people that are, operating at such a high level.
And it's, same here. I was just telling somebody the other day that I have had more job satisfaction in this brokerage. And by the way, I am a producing agent. I'm on the ground with every one of you. I know I need to step back and just run the brokerage, but this year I had to do both, right? And I haven't gotten much sleep and it's been a lot of work. However, I have had more job satisfaction and excited about my job than I've had in the past 10 years that I've had my real estate license. And so I know it's not just me because I hear it from the agents, which keeps me going as well. It's great. If you are not feeling supported or you're looking for a little more about what's out there, please follow us at MyRealEstateCo anywhere. Shoot us a DM. Ask your questions. Happy to have a call with you. Yeah, this was great, Josh. Thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want me
But
to try and close us out?
I think, yeah, I mean, I'm
Okay,
good.
I'll try. Holly's really good at this. So, um, message us if you need us. We are here for you. You all started this morning with a blank slate at zero. So go out and find yourself a buyer, a seller, or an agent to talk to. Bye, everyone.
See you later.